Apple is focusing on generative AI, and I want to share my thoughts on why this could be good news for semiconductor companies like AMD and Nvidia. I also want to take a closer look at some news that seem to be scaring me about the market right now. Let's get started with today's episode.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
So, when it comes to generative AI solutions and just AI solutions in general, I do believe Apple has been the most quiet out of the big techs. Right, we have Microsoft and Google kind of really fighting in this AI market right now. Amazon is obviously doing a lot with their clouding solutions, and then we have Meta also doing a lot. But Apple has been pretty quiet, and I do believe this is typically what Apple does, as Apple doesn't really release a product or really showcase a product until it's kind of on its final form, until they're really ready to show it. Where right now we have seen kind of all these debacles of how Google Bard and Google Gemini are failing because it seems like they are rushed. So it does seem like Apple goes more of just investing secretly to some extent and then releasing everything once it's almost ready. I mean, Apple, for example, has been working on their electric car for almost a decade, and it does come to reports that Apple is now kind of ending that form of research and development. And I want to say most investors don't really talk about it too much because when it comes to this, Apple, like I mentioned, is investing on it in maybe in the backside secretly. So it does, if they pull the plug, it's not necessarily the worst case scenario. And I do believe this is what the company has been doing with generative AI as well. Now, Apple recently had a shareholder event. And during the shareholder event, the CEO mentioned that the company is investing significantly in generative AI. And this is not the first time we've heard about this. I do believe the one of the first times we've heard about it was during their most recent earnings call that happened on February 1st, where the company continues to say that, hey, look, we're investing a lot in AI and we're planning to release a lot more information later this year. Here we can see in their quarter one transcript of 2024, Tim Cook mentions that, hey, look, as we look ahead, we will continue to invest in these and other technologies that will shape the future. That includes artificial intelligence, where we continue to spend tremendous amount of time and efforts, and we're excited to share the details of our ongoing work in that space later this year. Within that same earnings call, Apple mentions how they're such a strong leader in making their own silicon. They do mention that since the introduction of Apple into silicon in 2020, they've been proud to offer their users unmatched performance and power along with remarkable neural engine for artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we did see a lot about that in their Apple M3, the M3 and the M3 Pro that just recently came out and was announced, and how the M3 family's neural engine performance is much faster than the M2 and the M1. So it does seem like Apple, to some extent, has been quietly invested in the hardware needed to kind of run either forms of AI solutions, large language model solutions on their hardware, being their phones or their laptops and MacBook Pros. Before we go any further, I just want to say thank you all for the amazing support we are getting in this channel. We're closing into 40,000 subs. That is insane. So if you haven't and you are enjoying the content, make sure to hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button. Finally, if you want to support this channel a little bit more, check out my special offer at fool.com/Jose. Now back to today's episode. So during the Q&A session of the earnings call, analysts asked a lot of great questions about Apple's generative AI solutions. And obviously, Apple didn't share much, but one of the analysts was like, hey, look, I'm pretty excited about the potential upcoming announcements of AI. They want to hear any thoughts that would be kind of helpful for analysts to know. And Tim pretty much mentions in terms of generative AI, which I would guess is your focus, we have a lot of work going on internally, as I've alluded before. Our MO, if you will, has always been to do the work and then talk about the work and not to get out in front of ourselves. And I do believe that's what Microsoft, to some extent, and Google have been doing. They try, especially Google, they do get in front of themselves a little bit when talking and showcasing a lot of these AI solutions. So there was another great question by an analyst talking about capital expenditure. And obviously, as semiconductor investors, this is what we really care about. And he starts off by saying, hey, look, capital expenditure has actually come down in this last year. How are you investing in AI and CapEx is going down? So he's kind of curious of what kind of intensity Apple will see in forms of capital expenditure throughout the quarters. And the CFO pretty much said that they will never underinvest in the business. So we are making all the investments that are necessary throughout their product development. So maybe right now, in forms of just getting started, they don't need too much heavy investments in forms of product development, software development, service development. And so we'll continue to invest in every area of the business and at the appropriate level. And we're very excited about what's in store for the rest of the year. So this is something that's going to be curious because Apple, like we've seen, does create their own silicon. I am going to be curious, and I want to say I'm more, I would say 51% chance that Apple might have some form of AI chip that they are using for their forms of training or maybe inferencing. But like I mentioned earlier on in this episode, Apple is a huge consumer player. So if they're really bringing generative AI solution, and if they're doing some form of hybrid where that AI is going to be both on the cloud and on local device, then I do believe this is a huge opportunity for GPU companies like AMD and Nvidia. On the previous episode, I did talk a little bit about AI servers, and one thing I did note in that server is that Supermicro it is reportedly trying to get sales of its AI servers to Apple. So it does seem like Apple is going to start investing pretty heavy in AI servers, which obviously bodes well for semiconductor companies. Now, there's one thing that really scares me right now in the overall market, as TSMC founder says that an unnamed customer wants 10 new fabs to be build AI chips. And this is kind of like AI hype to some extent. I don't think we need 10 new fabs, and I'm pretty sure TSMC is not going to do that. But right now, it does seem like everything is all around AI market. And while I do believe this bodes well for certain semiconductor equipment companies, it's more important to understand the bottleneck affecting the AI market. And right now, the bottleneck is not really on the front end of manufacturing, it's more on the back end of manufacturing, which deals with things like advanced packaging. So the CFO of TSMC mentions that they're not talking about tens of thousands of wafer. They are talking about fabs, saying we need so many fabs. We need 3 fabs, 5 fabs, 10 fabs. Well, I can hardly believe that one. And I hope this doesn't come out right now where we just start to pop semiconductor fabrication plants all over the world, because it costs roughly 10 to 20 billion to build these, and it takes multiple years to get them started. So we don't know necessarily where the market is going to be in 2 to 3 years. So the last thing I want to do is see a lot of these foundry players, and I don't think anyone's going to do it, but the last thing I want to see all these foundries start to build new fabs thanks to this AI hype. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Like I said, if you are excited about the AI boom, I don't believe the foundries are the best way to play it. I do believe semiconductor equipments are the best way to play it. So I just wanted to share my thoughts there. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.